The Royal Air Force fielded hundreds of aircraft in World War II, from legendary Spitfires and Lancasters to forgotten biplanes and experimental jets. This video breaks down every important aircraft they put in the sky. Let's begin with the fighters, the aircraft that stood between Britain and invasion. Supermarine Spitfire, a legend written in contrails over Dover. The Spitfire's elliptical wings and Merlin engine roar became the sound of British defiance during the summer of 1940. Evolving through 24 distinct marks, it transformed from a short-range interceptor into a high-altitude monster capable of chasing German reconnaissance aircraft at 40,000 feet. Beautiful and deadly in equal measure, the Spit remained competitive throughout the war, only through constant upgrades to engine power, armament, and aerodynamics. No other fighter better symbolized the RAF's fighting spirit. Hawker Hurricane, the forgotten hero that actually shot down more German aircraft during the Battle of Britain than its glamorous cousin. Rugged and stable, the Hurricane served as an ideal gun platform for novice pilots, absorbing punishment with its fabric-covered rear fuselage that could be patched in field conditions with dope and canvas. While the Spitfire chased fighters, Hurricanes tore apart bomber formations with 8 Browning machine guns. However, by 1942, it was outclassed by newer German fighters and relegated to ground attack duties in North Africa and Burma. Hawker Typhoon, a troubled child that nearly died in infancy. Structural failures killed pilots, engines seized catastrophically, and the RAF considered cancellation. Then someone bolted rockets under its wings. Reinvented as a ground attack monster, the Tiffy became the terror of panzer columns during the Normandy breakout, its 420mm cannons and 8 rocket rails turning German armour into burning scrap metal. Hawker Tempest, the Typhoon refined. With a thinner laminar flow wing and improved high-speed handling, the Tempest excelled as a V-1 flying bomb interceptor, shooting down over 600 of Hitler's revenge weapons before they could reach London. It ranked among the fastest piston engine fighters of the entire war. Bristol Beaufighter, nicknamed Whispering Death by terrified Japanese soldiers in the Pacific. This heavy fighter hybrid mounted 420mm cannons and 6 machine guns in its nose, along with radar for night fighting. Later variants carried torpedoes and rocket projectiles for devastating anti-shipping strikes that turned the Mediterranean into a graveyard for Axis convoys. De Havilland Mosquito fighter variants, the wooden wonder built from plywood and balsa when aluminum was scarce. Too fast to intercept, the Mosquito dispensed with defensive guns entirely, relying on pure speed to survive. Night fighter versions with radar hunted German bombers over their own airfields, while intruder variants shot up enemy aircraft as they attempted to land. It became the most versatile aircraft of the war, excelling in roles its designers never imagined. The early war brought desperate measures. Gloucester Gladiator, the last biplane fighter, fought with obsolete courage over Malta and Norway. Bolton Paul Defiant, a disastrous turret fighter experiment that proved helpless against Messerschmitt 109s attacking from below. Westland Whirlwind, a promising twin-engine cannon fighter that suffered engine problems and limited production. Bristol Blenheim fighter variants converted bombers too slow to escape and too lightly armed to fight. Gloucester Meteor, Britain's first jet fighter, arrived in 1944 just in time to counter V-1 rockets. Too late for major impact against the Luftwaffe, it nevertheless demonstrated that the future of air combat belonged to turbine engines, not propellers. While fighters protected the skies, Britain's bombers brought the war to Germany. Next on the list, the heavy and medium bombers that carried the war deep into the Third Reich. Avro Lancaster, the legend of Bomber Command and the most successful British heavy bomber of the war. 4 Merlin engines hauled a 7-man crew and up to 22,000 pounds of bombs into the night skies over Germany. The Lancaster dropped Barnes Wallace's bouncing bombs against the Ruhr dams, then carried his Tall Boy and Grand Slam earthquake bombs that could punch through 30 feet of reinforced concrete. Where the Halifax struggled and the Stirling failed, the Lancaster survived, completing over 150,000 combat sorties. It became the aircraft that broke Germany's industrial spine, turning cities into firestorms and factories into rubble. Handley Page Halifax, the Lancaster's workhorse cousin and second most produced British heavy bomber. Less glamorous but equally vital, the Halifax actually demonstrated better high-altitude performance than its famous counterpart. Later marks served Coastal Command hunting U-boats and dropped paratroopers over Normandy, proving versatility beyond strategic bombing. Short Stirling, Britain's first four-engine heavy bomber, doomed by a critical design flaw. Pre-war Air Ministry specifications required it to fit existing hangars, forcing a wingspan too short for efficient high-altitude flight. The Stirling couldn't climb above 15,000 feet, making it easy prey for German fighters and flak. After suffering terrible losses, it was withdrawn from bombing operations and relegated to glider towing and paratroop transport. Avro Manchester, the failed twin-engine predecessor that accidentally created greatness. Powered by unreliable Rolls-Royce Vulture engines that seized and caught fire with alarming regularity, the Manchester was cancelled after only 200 aircraft. The airframe was brilliant, however, so engineers simply replaced 2 Vultures with 4 Merlins. The result was the Lancaster. Vickers Wellington, affectionately called the Wimpy after a cartoon character. Its revolutionary geodetic construction used a basket weave framework that could absorb incredible battle damage and remain airborne. Wellingtons returned to base with gaping holes torn through their fuselages, metal skin shredded, yet still flying on that brilliant Barnes-Wallis structure. The backbone of Britain's early war bombing campaign served on every front and later hunted submarines with radar and searchlights. Armstrong Whitworth Whitley, recognisable by its slab-sided fuselage and perpetual nose-down flying attitude. The first British bomber to strike Germany in 1939, initially dropping propaganda leaflets before graduating to high explosives. Painfully outdated by 1942, it transitioned to training and paratroop operations. Handley Page Hampton, nicknamed the Flying Suitcase due to its narrow fuselage that left crews desperately cramped. Fast for its time but dangerously vulnerable to fighter attack, the Hamptons suffered catastrophic losses during daylight operations. It found a new purpose, dropping torpedoes and laying mines in enemy harbours before final retirement. Bristol Blenheim, a light bomber pressed into service despite being woefully inadequate. Too slow to escape fighters and too undergunned to defend itself, Blenheims were slaughtered during low-level attacks against German positions in France. Desperate times demanded desperate measures, and young crews paid the price. De Havilland Mosquito bomber variants, the unarmed wonder that proved speed trumped guns. Carrying a 4,000-pound bomb load at speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour, the wooden Mosquito flew Pathfinder missions marking targets for Lancaster streams. It precision-bombed Gestapo headquarters, broke prisoners from Amiens jail, and struck targets requiring pinpoint accuracy rather than mass destruction. Bristol Beaufort handled the dangerous work of torpedo bombing for Coastal Command, making low-level runs against heavily defended convoys. American Lend-Lease brought the Douglas Boston, the Havoc Nightfighter variant, and the North American Mitchell medium bomber, often proving superior to equivalent British designs. While bombers struck inland, another fleet patrolled Britain's lifeline across the Atlantic. Let's continue with maritime patrol, reconnaissance, and the specialised aircraft that fought Britain's silent battles. Short Sunderland, the flying porcupine that prowled the Atlantic hunting U-boats. This massive 4-engine flying boat bristled with defensive armament, mounting up to 18 machine guns that once allowed a single Sunderland to fight off 6 Junkers 88s and survive the encounter. 10-hour patrols meant crews needed comfort, so the Sunderland featured a proper galley, sleeping bunks, and even a bar, earning its reputation as the gentleman's aircraft. Equipped with radar and depth charges, these flying boats turned the tide in the Battle of the Atlantic, forcing U-boats to dive and surrender their speed advantage. Consolidated Catalina, an American flying boat that proved ugly but devastatingly effective. A Catalina spotted the Bismarck through storm clouds, leading the Royal Navy to Germany's mightiest battleship. These amphibious workhorses conducted endless Atlantic vigils, rescued downed airmen from freezing seas, and hunted submarines with methodical patience. Consolidated Liberator Maritime Patrol variants closed the Atlantic Gap, that mid-ocean killing zone where U-boats previously hunted beyond land-based aircraft range. Long-range Liberators finally provided air cover across the entire Atlantic convoy route, turning Donitz's wolf packs from hunters into hunted. Lockheed Hudson served as Coastal Command's light patrol bomber workhorse, while the Vickers Warwick and Armstrong Whitworth Albemarle provided backup maritime patrol capability, though both remained overshadowed by more successful designs. Moving to reconnaissance, Spitfire PR variants stripped away guns and ammunition to carry cameras and extra fuel. Painted pale blue to blend with high-altitude skies, these unarmed aircraft flew alone deep over enemy territory at extreme altitude. Photo reconnaissance Spitfires mapped Normandy's invasion beaches, located V-weapon launch sites, and provided battle damage assessment after bomber raids. Pilots had no defense except speed and height, gambling their lives on staying invisible. Mosquito PR variants extended reconnaissance range deep into Germany with their wooden construction and blistering speed. Too fast to catch and too high to shoot. They photographed Hitler's Atlantic Wall fortifications and provided intelligence that shaped Allied strategy. Bristol Blenheim and Westland Lysander handled early war reconnaissance duties but proved dangerously vulnerable and were quickly replaced. The Lysander found new purpose in Army cooperation roles. Its high wing, fixed landing gear, and remarkable short takeoff and landing capability allowed operations from tiny fields. The Lysander became famous as the secret agent taxi, landing in occupied France under cover of darkness to insert and extract special operations executive agents. Slow and vulnerable during daylight, it excelled at clandestine missions requiring precision landings in impossible places. Oster AOP series aircraft served as tiny artillery spotters, essentially militarized civilian designs carrying a pilot and observer. Painfully slow but highly maneuverable, Osters directed artillery fire from treetop height, often drawing enemy fire themselves. Miles Martinet target tugs provided realistic gunnery practice, towing fabric sleeves for gunners to shoot at without the consequences of missing. Fairy Swordfish, the obsolete biplane torpedo bomber that absolutely refused to die. Nicknamed the String Bag, this fabric-covered relic flew at a glacial 130 miles per hour maximum speed from open cockpits, yet it crippled the Bismarck with a torpedo hit to her rudder and devastated the Italian battle fleet at Taranto. The Swordfish could fly in weather conditions that grounded modern aircraft. Its slow speed actually an advantage when landing on pitching carrier decks in Atlantic gales. It sank more Axis shipping tonnage than any other Allied aircraft, proving that obsolescence meant nothing when flown by skilled and courageous crews. Fairey Albacore was supposed to replace the Swordfish with an enclosed cockpit and modern features, but never matched its predecessor's legendary success. Fairey Barracuda brought monoplane design to torpedo bombing, attacking the German battleship Tirpitz in Norwegian fjords. Bristol Beaufighter also proved devastating in the strike role, shredding coastal convoys with cannons, rockets, and torpedoes. From carrier decks to training fields, Britain's air war required aircraft for every conceivable role. Finally, we have carrier-based fighters, transport aircraft, and the trainers that built the RAF. Fairey Fulmar served as the Fleet Air Arm's two-seat naval fighter, carrying an observer for navigation over featureless oceans. Unfortunately, the second crewman's weight made it heavy and sluggish, leaving the Fulmar hopelessly outclassed by land-based fighters. It defended Malta convoys with dogged determination, despite severe performance limitations, its pilots knowing they flew inferior machines into superior opposition. Fairey Firefly improved the two-seat fighter concept with a powerful engine and longer range. This fighter reconnaissance hybrid found success in the Pacific Theater, striking Japanese installations and providing the Fleet Air Arm with a genuinely competitive naval aircraft. Hawker Sea Hurricane brought the Battle of Britain's hero to carrier decks with reinforced structure and catapult hooks. It defended Atlantic convoys from Focke-Wulf Condor bombers, providing crucial air cover during the desperate early war years before purpose-built naval fighters arrived in sufficient numbers. Supermarine Seafire adapted the Spitfire for carrier operations with mixed results. The performance was magnificent, but the narrow-track landing gear caused frequent deck accidents. The Seafire proved fragile for the violent arrested landings that carrier operations demanded, requiring exceptional pilot skill to land safely without collapsing the undercarriage. American Grumman Martlet and Wildcat fighters proved far more rugged and forgiving on carrier decks. Obsolete bombers found new life as transport aircraft. Armstrong Whitworth Whitley, Handley Page Halifax, and short Stirling transport variants dropped paratroopers over Normandy, Arnhem, and the Rhine crossings. The Halifax could haul troops or cargo deep into enemy territory, transforming from bomb hauler to logistical lifeline. Airspeed. Horsa gliders brought silent insertion capability to British airborne forces. These massive wooden gliders carried 28 fully equipped troops, or a jeep with trailer, towed behind bombers, then released over the target zone. Horsas landed in complete darkness, hours before D-Day to capture critical bridges, their troops spilling out to secure objectives before defenders realized an invasion had begun. Disposable by design, they were built cheaply in furniture factories from plywood and fabric. Sacrificial vessels that delivered elite forces, then were abandoned. General Aircraft Hamilcar represented the ultimate glider, large enough to carry light tanks. This engineering marvel of plywood construction and steel tube framework could deliver a Tetrarch tank intact behind enemy lines, providing airborne forces with armor support from the moment they landed. Carrying 40 troops or a 7-ton load, the Hamilcar proved that gliders could transport virtually anything if built large enough. De Havilland Tiger Moth taught every RAF pilot basic airmanship from its open cockpit. This iconic biplane trainer was simple, forgiving, and built by the thousands. Student pilots learned stick and rudder skills in the Tiger Moth before progressing to more complex aircraft. Many survived the war to become beloved civilian machines, the aircraft that taught Britain to fly. Miles Master bridged the gap between elementary trainers and operational fighters. This low-wing monoplane with retractable landing gear taught combat maneuvers safely, while Merlin-powered versions prepared pilots specifically for Spitfires and Hurricanes, matching the high-performance characteristics they would encounter in combat squadrons. Avro Anson, affectionately nicknamed Faithful Annie, served as the multi-engine trainer and light transport. Teaching navigation, bombing, and gunnery to bomber crews, the Anson became the longest-serving RAF aircraft, flying from 1935 until 1968. Reliable and docile, it prepared thousands of airmen for the complexities of multi-engine operations. Airspeed Oxford twin-engine trainers prepared pilots for bomber and transport duties. Built from wood and nicknamed the Oxbox, it provided essential advanced training in a relatively safe package. North American Harvard completed advanced training with American Muscle. Loud and powerful, its screaming engine taught respect and precision, preparing pilots for the unforgiving nature of high-performance combat aircraft. From Tiger Moths that taught fledgling pilots to Lancasters that crushed the Reich, from Swordfish biplanes to Meteor jets, Britain's aircraft arsenal spanned the complete spectrum of aerial warfare. Every role, every mission, every pilot was backed by an air force that refused to yield.